This is Chicago's Morning Answer with Dan Proft and Amy Jacobson. If you're looking for the latest news, insight into what it means, and the sharpest opinion, there's only one station in Chicago where you can turn, and it's this one. We're AM 560, The Answer.
Top of the morning, Dan and Amy. So let's go back again to hear what Representative Mike Gallagher had to say. He is the chief sponsor of the legislation that would force TikTok to divest from ByteDance, its Chicom-controlled parent company, if it was going to continue to be available on smartphones in America. Here's the basis for it from the chief sponsor of the legislative measure.
Thank you. TikTok is a threat to our national security because it is owned by ByteDance, which does the bidding of the Chinese Communist Party. We know this because ByteDance leadership says so and because Chinese law requires it. This bill therefore forces TikTok to break up with the Chinese Communist Party. It does not apply to American companies. It only applies to companies subject to the control of foreign adversaries defined by Congress. It says nothing about election interference and cannot be turned against any American social media platform. It does not impact websites in general. The only impacted sites are those associated with foreign adversary apps, such as TikTok.com. It can never be used to penalize individuals. The text explicitly prohibits that, and it cannot be used to censor speech. It takes no position at all on the content of speech, only foreign adversary control of what is becoming the dominant news platform for Americans under 30. This is a common sense measure to protect our national security. I urge my colleagues to support this critical bipartisan legislation.
For the Contra argument, Michael Tracy, independent journalist, writing at Newsweek, if the case for banning TikTok advanced by the intelligence community is so airtight and worthy of instant unanimous approval, they should disclose the supporting evidence. Otherwise, the public's only option is to credulously accept subjective, questionably motivated claims of unknown intelligence community operators who purport to assess a national security threat posed by communist-controlled teenage dance videos. Before rashly ejecting up to 170 million American users from a top social media platform, partly based on evidence furnished in these secret Star Chamber proceedings, why not declassify and release the relevant evidentiary material so the public can evaluate for themselves? Why should informed democratic deliberations on the subject be reserved for those with specially approved security clearances? For more on this topic and a few other legal matters, we're pleased to be joined again by Professor William Jacobson. He is clinical professor of law and director of the Securities Law Clinic at Cornell Law School, the founder of legalinsurrection.com and the president of the Legal Insurrection Foundation, also the Equal Protection Project. Professor Jacobson, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Thank you for having me back.
So are you persuaded by Mike Gallagher? Are you persuaded by Michael Tracy? Are you somewhere in between? Where do you come down on this?
Well, I'd say I probably agree with both, that there does seem to be a consensus that the parent company of TikTok, which is controlled by the Chinese government, has access to information it shouldn't have. But I do also think there's got to be more than just a consensus, because sometimes the consensus is wrong. So I think there's got to be some way, and if it's provided, to people in Congress who have security clearances, but there's got to be some check there confirming that this is a security risk. This is not something that's new. It's not something that it's not a new allegation. It's not something that was just invented for this bill. For multiple years, there's been complaints about this. And so, yeah, I think there should be some evidence. I don't think we need to reveal to the public our secret sources if we have them. But I think, the people voting on this in Congress should have, access to that information, assuming that they've got the appropriate clearances. So I kind of agree with both. I think there should be some, evidence that this is happening, which people have been claiming for years, not just recently. On the other hand, if it's true, then I think we should get the Chinese spy app off the phones of 170 million Americans. What are they doing with this information? So, yeah, I think I agree with both. But if it's true, then I think we need to prevent this information gathered on 170 million Americans from being available to the Chinese intelligence operations.
Yeah, but I mean, the question is, and then is anybody else doing something similar in kind to what TikTok is alleged to have to be doing? You know, Google and Facebook and other media platforms, social media platforms. And are there third-party vendors that are packaging this information and selling it? And does the government have access to it? And is there information of this sort that TikTok is allegedly collecting that's going back and forth between the government and social media companies for the purposes of censoring, monitoring, propagandizing to Americans? I don't hear those questions being pushed as much. And so while I guess I'll, provide a little bit more benefit of the doubt to our intelligence agencies than the Chinese Communist Party, it doesn't mean that I don't have questions for what our government and our government's relationships with social media companies in this country are.
Well, that's all good and true. If there may be more questions, there may be more things that need to be looked at, but just because we can't solve all the problems doesn't mean we shouldn't solve any. And if it is true, if it's true that TikTok serves as a essentially spy app for the Chinese government, then I think we should address that problem. If there are other issues, which there certainly are, it was just in the paper 2 or 3 days ago about automobile manufacturers putting software in vehicles that gets shared with insurance companies. And people, so yeah, there's a lot more questions. I don't think this solves every problem. And I think there are bigger questions about social media. TikTok, which I won't put on my phone because I don't want what's purported to be a Chinese spyware on my phone. I'm not going to do it knowingly. Seems to be particularly addictive. Seems to be the crack cocaine of social media. That's a whole different question that this bill doesn't address, which is, really a health concern for the country with social media in general. But TikTok appears to be the worst and most addictive of the social media apps, to the extent that when it was feared that this might end up in a quote-unquote ban of TikTok, which it won't, that, the Congress was flooded with calls from people panicking that they can't go without their TikTok. I mean, that sounds like addiction to me. That doesn't sound.
But also
like,
a lot of businesses rely on TikToks to survive. I mean, that's their marketing tool. I mean, there was one lady in Chicago, she's selling cosmetic line, and if she didn't have TikTok, she wouldn't have a company. So she she wanted to sue. Like, if they were doing that, she was going to pursue some legal options.
Good luck.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know about that. This bill will not actually ban TikTok in the United States. It would only it would impose very severe civil penalties if it remains foreign controlled.
Okay.
So the choice, and I just read the bill before we came on the air here, because you can't always believe what you read in the news media either. And the way it's set up is there are, I think, $5,000 per user fine, which multiply that by 170 million. That's obviously going to put someone out of business, but only so long as it is a foreign controlled entity. And so there's a definition of that. So that's what it does. It says, get the Chinese government out of this app that's on 170 million phones, or you're going to be fined into oblivion. So why aren't they separating it? Why aren't they going to spin it out? Why aren't they going to create, no pun intended, a Chinese wall between the Chinese government and TikTok? That's the question. So that's how it's structured. If this law passes and ByteDance, the parent company, divests itself or spins out TikTok continues. People can still get their fix on it. People can still run their businesses on it. The only way that gets interrupted is if ByteDance, the Chinese company, is so insistent on having access to information on 170 million Americans that they won't spin off the company. So I think the fears of business people who built their businesses around what's alleged to be a Chinese spy app, it will continue as long as that connection is broken.
Let's turn our attention to the Trump trials, both in Manhattan and in Fulton County. So some of the indictments against Trump and associates were dismissed. Some of the charges were dismissed by the judge down there, but there's leave to refile. The problem is for, Fani Willis or whoever might try that case, is if you attempt to cure those charges that were dismissed, to refile them, you really make it almost impossible that you're going to get to trial before the election, which is the whole point, isn't it?
Yeah, and that proves what's wrong with this prosecution. The whole point is to get it to trial before the election, okay? And that's driven all of the cases. And that's what's wrong with these prosecutions of Trump. They are driven by the election. And so they could have been brought 2 years ago. We'd know the answer to all these cases. We'd know the verdicts in all these cases. But they decided, all of them, with the exception of the one about the Mar-a-Lago documents, because that wasn't an old factual claim. It was relatively new. But other than the Florida case, all these prosecutors sat on their cases until the election year, and now they're complaining, we may not get it to trial in time for the election because, look, this defendant's actually defending himself in court on legal grounds. Well, too bad. Okay, and that's the problem in Georgia. I think it's slated for an August 5 trial. They're going to have to re-indict and expand the indictment. I'm not 100% sure on the procedure here, whether they have to reconvene the grand jury or call a new grand jury. I just don't know the answer to that. But everybody seems to be in agreement if they have to do that. It's going to reset deadlines. It's going to reset a lot of things, which would make it almost impossible to have it heard before the election. But that shouldn't be the question. The question is, why wasn't this brought a year or two ago?
Yeah. Is there any possibility they can drop the case entirely?
Well, I think the only way that's probably going to happen is if Fani Willis gets kicked off the case. We don't, I think, have a ruling from the judge yet on that.
No.
I thought they were supposed to come. CNN was reporting that ruling's coming down today.
Well, we'll see.
Okay.
The other case, Manhattan, which seems more likely to get to trial, but Trump lawyers are attempting to push it off, which speaks to an understanding that we've been arguing for a long time on this show, that you don't want any of these cases to go to trial before the election. But he's pushing it off, saying that the trial date that's set for March 25th should be stayed until the Supreme Court rules on his immunity claims. What do you think the likelihood of him getting that done in that Manhattan case?
I think very slim. I don't think they're going to stop. I mean, it is a New York State trial, and it is one where the conduct at issue, I think, predated him being president. I have to check that timeline exactly. But this is a books and records case as to how he accounted for certain attorney's fees, basically. And it was alleged that he cooked the books or he manipulated the books to cover up the fact that he was paying Stormy Daniels hush money. I think it's a legally weak case. It's stale. They've invented a novel legal theory to turn it into a felony to extend the statute of limitations. So there's a lot of problems there, but I don't expect a judge in New York State to say, well, because you might have immunity from prosecution, you might, depending what the Supreme Court rules, from prosecution, when you were in your capacity as president, has nothing to do with what your business did, with regard to paying money to somebody. So it's in my mind, flimsy, frivolous, legally unsound indictment of him in prosecution, but I don't see a judge saying, well, let's put it all on hold. So I think that one's going to go to trial. That will be probably the only one we get before the election.
Professor William Jacobson, clinical professor of law, director of the Securities Law Clinic at Cornell Law School, founder of LegalInsurrection.com, president of the Legal Insurrection Foundation, also the Equal Protection Project. Professor Jacobson, thank you as always.
Great, thank you.
And he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.
You're listening to Chicago's Morning Answer with Dan Proft and Amy Jacobson on AM 560. The Answer.
Hey, business owners, are you wondering how to grow your business? Do you need cash flow and a ready source for financing? Well, Signature Bank can help. Hi, Mike Gallagher here to let you know that Signature Bank's loan decisions are made locally by a team who knows your name, cares about your business, and is invested in your success. When you need advice about your business or even have a question, Signature Bank is there to help. There are no handoffs or call centers. This is a team that wants to get to know you and your business. That's why Signature Bank in Chicago is my bank. That's right. I'm a customer. When I call, someone picks up the phone on the other end. And with Signature Bank, I can securely bank anywhere, anytime. Reach out to my friends at Signature Bank. Call 773-467-5630. That's 773-467-5630. Or visit them online at signaturebank.bank. Signaturebank.bank. Your business could be Signature Bank's next success story. Member FDIC, Equal Housing Lender.
Signs of spring are upon us. Birds are singing, crocuses are popping up, and your concrete is sinking. Well, Permaseal can help with that. Hi, I'm Roy Spencer. As you explore your yard this spring, you'll likely see some cracked or sunken concrete, a sidewalk, stoop, driveway, or patio. Permaseal has the answer for you. Our polylevel solution can raise and level sunken concrete quickly and effectively, putting an end to eyesores and dangerous trip hazards. Call today for a free estimate, 800-421-SEAL. Polylevel is the quickest, least expensive, and most durable system to repair your sunken concrete problems. Don't live with a problem that will only get worse.
During the month of March, we're giving you 15% off your concrete repair solution. Be sure to call today, 800-421-7325. Permaseal has been making Chicagoland and Northwest Indiana homes healthier and more valuable for over 45 years and has an A+ rating with the Better Business Bureau. Don't replace it, raise it. 800-421-7325 or permaseal.net.
If you're in or near retirement, a sound strategy and a collaborative team are waiting for you at the Wealth Management Group. They can tailor a plan